This octopus is made by Elaine Vogel. I'm not sure which project this was.
It's facing west. I
Is
was
it?
in that. Yeah.
Oh, yes, you were. Okay,
And that was her project.
great. Okay, this was a Claudia Riedner project. Looking at this reminds me that Tom and Jewel had a pair of concrete lions outside their house on South 21st that just disappeared overnight. Concrete.
They were concrete and they had a heavy-duty chain sunk into the stone, and somebody came and cut through that chain and went off with them. I was glad to see them go, because
What's the purpose of that?
It's called thievery. So I'm not exactly sure how this image warranted being in this show, but every time I drive by this architecture, I snicker.
What do they call it?
Where is that?
It's George Park and Sixth Avenue.
Oh, really?
So does anybody in the audience recognize this?
I do. It looks like my garage. That was our remodel.
Rick, do you want to tell us what happened here?
This is a Pierce Transit bus ran into the corner of that building. The concrete, it's a concrete front, 24 by 24 inch concrete column holding up that, the fascia there, and it knocked it across the parking lot. It's going about 45 miles an hour.
that'll do it.
And the tenants there had just gone to the back. They were working in their office up here, and they had just left.
Wow.
We fixed it. It took about a year of construction, and insurance paid for it. Pierce Transit.
So this is on Puyallup Avenue.
What does it look like now?
It looks normal.
It looks just like it did before, including all of the line work to make the plywood look like it was boards. And Lynn did that. She made all of the, I don't know,
For the formwork.
the formwork, yeah, it was amazing.
Concrete.
Yeah.
So here's a postcard made by Erik, I think, the engineer. And does anybody recognize what building is being torn down in downtown Tacoma? Luzon. So there really is a wrong way sign right there.
Yeah, really.
Yes, the McDonald's.
This is McDonald's. And when I moved here in 2001, I said, really? Chihuli's work is in McDonald's? And my neighbor across the street said, oh, yeah, we're pretty special here in Tacoma because he's from here. So I believed that for many years, and it turns out not to be true.
That's not Chihuly?
No. So here's a Sharon Steyer photograph. The next three are the same subject. Can anybody tell me the name of this project that was at Point Defiance in a park?
That's one,
That's Fantasyland or something?
Fairyland or, yeah.
Oh, that's the
Little Red Riding Hood.
Never Neverland.
There we go. I knew we'd get to it eventually.
Biggest loss for this city in years.
Yes, and then about a year ago, I believe they sold or auctioned off all the pieces that had been stored in a basement somewhere. All gone. And these are quite large scale. You can't tell in these pictures.
Just earlier this year, Lynn. I think there was a story in the paper earlier this year, that I think they had found a couple more that they were
Oh, really?
Destroy the evidence.
selling off.
So these sculptures are in the Dome District. They no longer have the signs on them. I don't know why those came down.
They weren't supposed to have any advertising on them. I thought they were kind of pretty.
That's too bad.
Yeah, they're still there though.
Yes, they are.
So these are Chihuly sculptures, and this is in the Swiss.
Can you get a, well, you can get a burger at Swiss. Swiss is gone. No, I know.
Oh, that was good. That was so amazing.
So this is a Lance Kagi project, and he had everyone bring a chair down to Tollefson Plaza. And on a day where there was strong sun, you might remember what that's like. And then you used blue masking tape to tape only where the shadow was.
Is that you in the lower left?
I think so,
Taking the picture?
yes.
Move the shadow now.
This is definitely a John Carlton photograph. Okay, was anybody aware of the fight the city was having with
Yes.
mystery people about the crosswalks? I think they were removing them, and some artists said, no, we want really inventive crosswalks. So these crosswalks showed up in the middle of the night. I think they were on St. Helens. What do you think? And if I'm not mistaken, the city was really ticked off, and they went to these intersections and ground down this paint.
Yeah, really.
They ground it down. Oh, that's too bad we don't have a picture of that.
You'd get in trouble if you were caught taking that picture.
What were those?
You know, I don't really know anything about them. It looks like some artists were having fun. Jory?
No, a couple of, several years ago, the gal who was involved with the Sixth Avenue Art Fair, his name goes out of my old head, and we created knitted things all around the city. I decorated the handrail down to the parking lot by the Tacoma Art Museum.
Oh, that's
And
great.
this was part of it.
Okay, that's great to know.
Crochet.
So she crocheted?
They did our,
Oh, that's crochet?
Are you the one who crocheted all those?
No,
bike rackets? Oh.
no, but I knitted some things for the handrail down to by the court, law court.
Okay, well, thank you. Is that along Ruston?
You know, I have no idea where this is. Can you guys all read this?
Yeah.
A little bit.
For nearly
Oh, the small print?
Yes, the small print.
For nearly 100 years.
Release arsenic and lead, which you now find in our soil.
Yeah.
Too bad I don't have a pointer, because as a group, we could read together the whole thing.
Eric was able to, he was enlarging it.
So I think of this as kind of a Tacoma picture.
Caution, radiation, Eric.
Well, that's taken up above where the smelter used to be.
There you go.
This is one of the postcards from the series. Rick, can you think of the name of who did this? Janice Wagner's husband,
Cordy? Cordy Wagner?
Cordy Wagner, made this image.
Straight with the mountain.
I have no idea who did this.
Old sofas I have known.
These are funny.
So the B and I needs to be in this series of pictures because of how quirky itself is.
Yeah.
class of
That was a real sign, by the way.
Oh, that's the construction out of the Dune Peninsula.
No,
No, I think it's near
No?
Tacoma Screw.
16, yeah.
this is the Tacoma Freeway when they were building the exit for Sprague.
Oh, is this the?
And,
Oh, that's the one that was all off, right?
well, yes, it was.
Yeah, then
And-
they decided they
And
would,
this is a freeway exit where you make a sharp left-hand turn to get onto Sprague.
It's all.
It's still kind of weird.
It's still kind of weird, yes. It's Tacoma.
That's good.
So I put these in here for Rick. Maybe Rick took these pictures leading up to
yeah, home in Tacoma.
his postcard.
Home of Tacoma.
Most of those are still there,
Yes.
just like that.
Wow, look at that.
It's up on the.
Don't take that train.
Yeah, where did that go?
Fire station of right.
Reward, stolen bonsai.
Oh,
And then,
Brewery district.
look at that tree in the yard there.
wow, yeah.
Gone.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Japanese.
It's that area.
Is this a sign anyone recognizes?
It's, I think down near Day Island, you know, down near,
Pit stop.
isn't that the bridge
I
that
think it's
goes over?
The tide flats across. the-
Yes.
That's across the
Oh,
Puyallup,
you're right.
Yeah, I think it is.
down off of Milwaukee.
Yep. That's quirky.
Oh. Yep.
Okay, that's it, folks. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce Willie next. And first of all, I want to say that I invited Willie Stewart to come and talk about his life in Tacoma. So it might look like he's up here bragging because he has done so much for us, but it's at the invitation of Tripod. There's a story about our first presenter tonight, Willie Stewart. Hundreds of people were awaiting the appearance of the Pope for an audience in front of the Vatican. Among them were 2 Americans. Finally, the doors opened and the Pope appeared on the balcony, followed by several people. One of the Americans whispered to his companion, "Isn't this spectacular?" His friend whispered back, "Yes, it is. But who is the old guy in white clothes standing beside Willie Stewart?" Willie?
First of all, good evening to everyone. And I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks to Lynn for asking me to talk a little about my life. And I made it only on the condition that I would have the support of my real friend, Tom Holt. So even though I will be presenting, it was his encouragement and his support that enabled me to talk. I'm very shy. I grew up in Texas, and I have to emphasize that because there's a person in the audience from a very small state that they call Missouri. And so then we have someone here from unknown places, Erlissa Bannister. Every time I talk to her, she's from a different country. However, I grew up in Texas. I have a wife and 2 children, a son and a daughter. And I'm keeping my phone on. I want to share that my wife is in the final phase of her life as she's transitioning. And they project that she probably would survive no longer than maybe Monday to the most, or maybe even tomorrow or the next day. No one knows. From advanced Parkinson and half years on a feeding tube and oxygen, 5 years in the bed, and 31 years with the disease. Now on to a little more about me. My real life is an educator, but prior to that, my family, we were sharecroppers. And the jobs that I experienced, picking cotton, chopping corn, shucking corn, picking up pecans, washing dishes in a restaurant. And the real great job was the ability to drive a truck to take chickens to the house for them to be prepared for the restaurant. And I did that once in a while. And I was seriously, at the age of 12, I was able to pick 300 pounds of cotton. And I'm proud to say I was considered the king of cotton picking for my age group. And it was that experience that drove me to want to have a different life, not knowing that what I want to do. And that's what that was the best motivation to get an education. Okay.
That's the end.
Oh, when I got to go the other way?
Yeah.
Okay, that's somebody you may or may not know. So I'll go. Okay, that's Lincoln High School. And you see I have my Lincoln Aid cap, my Lincoln Aid there, and I have one of the greatest teachers ever been in Tacoma, Helen Myrick, Helen Milas, a tremendous Spanish teacher. The only one I know that could teach 4 units of Spanish to one class because of the running start and the decline in enrollment. She could no longer maintain, say, Spanish 1 or Spanish 2. She had to do 2 or 3 classes together and did a superb job. Now, Lincoln at that time, when I first arrived at Lincoln in 1969, I was the assistant principal. I became the principal in 1970, and I served for 8 years as principal. The initial enrollment my first year there as an assistant was 2,150. Then it changed drastically because we opened Henry Falls High School, where Mrs. Bannister, who was here, was a great teacher of several languages, just a phenomenal lady. And every time she sees me, she pulls up her shoes like she said, the boots are, putting the boots on. But that's her weakness, though, better than her strength. But on a serious note, a long time there were only 2 schools in Tacoma, public schools, Stadium and Lincoln. And there were 2 categories of which they identified the schools, Stadium as the professional schools with lawyers and all of that, and Lincoln would be the rail splitters, doing blue-collar jobs, and then the top jobs they would have would be a police officer or a fireman. I've been a Kiwanian since 1971. I was the second African-American to be installed into Kiwanis in Tacoma. The first person was a gentleman by the name of Eugene Brackenridge. And after he got in, he invited me in. And I've had every position within the group, and because of that, I've received one of the highest honors you can get as a member of the Kiwanis Club. It's a Legion of Honor, 35 years. However, they just celebrated my 52nd year as a member of Kiwanis, and I'm still involved. Now, Helen knows how I feel about athletics because I've seen it change the lives of people. So I joined the Tacoma Athletic Commission in 1972. And I've received several awards there in recognition. But Doug MacArthur was a long-time radio person, the athletic director at the University of Puget Sound, and over athletics for the Metropolitan Park District. And they just named a field after him over near Truman Middle School. And I was honored for that. And you see the students there, each month we recognize students for their achievements, male and female. And last night, I was honored to represent and present recognition to 131 students and $50,000 worth of scholarship funds, all funded by one person, the NAMES Foundation. And the picture to the left with the little dignity, that's the work of my friend Tom Holt, and that picture is at the Willie Stewart Academy, which we'll talk about. And since I was a non-reader, he placed the showed the library books, so it's all fake because I don't know. Okay. The Goodwill Industries. If you go into that building, on the wall, you'll see a picture of me with a yellow hat because I was involved in doing a Habitat for Humanity house with them, but I served on the board and I was a part of the fundraising group for the building of this building. And I was a part of it. And I was honored there about 3 weeks ago as they started another fundraiser for the 100-year centennial. Now, this is, I've been involved with the Boys and Girls Club for a long time. When I first began, you may not know, it was not boys and girls. It was boys only. And then we became boys and girls, and we're the strongest club we've ever been because of that coeducational thing. And I received a National Service Award for my long-time association with them. I still continue with them. And I monitor 2 to 7 kids once a month. But we had to cancel for the last year and a half because of the COVID. And so hopefully in September, we're able to resume that. Palmer Scholars. The name Palmer, I wish more people knew about who he really was. He was an insurance agent. And a few years ago, a church on the east side burned down. And he and a group of persons from the University Presbyterian Church went and extended help. While he was there, the pastor of the church, Albert Davis, and I had his kids at Lincoln, said that he wished that there was some support for his kids to go to college. It moved Merle Palmer to the point he talked to his wife, and for 4 years in a row, from his personal funds, he said, start out with 1 and up to 4. Then about 10 of us from the community who believed in the principle of this said, Merle, you're not going to live forever. And that program is too good. Let's form a foundation, get all the legal papers. I want to say now, they've had 1,131 students to go through it, and 160 students now. The uniqueness of it, each one is funded for 4 years. There was another person who was so concerned about these persons that if anyone has an interest in pursuing a graduate degree anonymously, he would fund it. So we've had several persons from Lincoln High School to accept that, and we've had 2 to take the next step and get their doctorate degree, all because of one person through an insurance company. These are some of the organizations that I've served in leadership role. As the president of the American Personnel Association, when I became the assistant superintendent of personnel for the human resources, I was first the president of the local chapter, there's a parish group, then the Washington State group, and then in 1989, I was chosen as the national president of all the personnel administrators in all the school districts in the United States, which was a very rich experience for me that I had a chance to travel to all of the states and be involved with all the best personnel practices, and it was tremendous. And I tell you, Washington stood ahead of them in terms of unions and improving the conditions for teachers. And the worst one, as usual, was the southern states, and they're still there in terms of that. Then I was president of the Washington group, the Tacoma School Administrators, and probably the most rewarding one was being the president of the American Cancer Society for the state of Washington, because in that process, we decided that we needed to bring other states in and not have all the states with different presidents. So under my leadership, I was able to go to Anchorage, Alaska twice to get that group to join us, and then the group from Oregon came in. So in my 2 years as leader there, I had an opportunity to bring those two states in to form the region. Now they brought even more in, because the idea is that increases the resources. And out of the American Cancer Society, remember the Relay for Life? Gordy Klatt started that as one person in 1985. I gave him funds, but in '86 I joined. And it made it real easy because he became the commander of the 50th General Army Hospital in Seattle, and I was selected to be his executive officer, which is the number 2 position with him. And we worked to that out, and they made, it's not only Tacoma, it's not all over the United States, it's all over the world, one person. And when he died of cancer, unfortunately, about 5 years ago, I was selected to be one of the speakers at that service, along with Pat Flynn and a few others who were very close to him in that journey. In 1990 was an interesting experience. In August, I was down in the gym, and I had been absent for a couple of weeks. So a gentleman walked up to me and said, "Willie Stewart, where have you been?" I said, "Oh, I've been to Texas." And he looked at me and said, "One or two things. Either you had an emergency or you were crazy for being in that heat." And I said, I lost a brother. And he asked the question, "What was wrong with your brother?" I said he had metastasis of the prostate. Then he said, "I'm going to give you this information. I want you to call your doctor and ask him for the prostate-specific antigen." He said, "Oh, forget that. Just tell him to do a blood test on your prostate." And I did. I went to the office and I called. And in October, I went in, and it was a disclosure. The interesting thing of that, my doctor was a student of mine from Lincoln High School. Dr. Charles Weatherby, who just retired about a month ago. And his sister was his receptionist. And it was interesting, when she called and said the doctor needed to talk to you, I said, "You put him on the phone." And I said, "I want you to tell me why." He said, "No, I'm in charge this time. You have to come in person." And that's when he shared with me the news. I went through the process. And then on December the 9th, 1990, I received a radical prostatectomy, and thanks to the support of the many medical persons. And at that point, I felt a strong need that men don't like to talk about that. So 4 of us formed the prostate cancer group down on Market Street, which is now part of the University of Washington, that building. And now we are over 200 members, and we meet once a month at the University Presbyterian Church, usually on the 4th Tuesday, except for the month of December. And we don't try to play physicians. We only share our experiences, because most of the treatments now are totally different from the time that I was treated. You have all type of modern things now. But the key to everything we emphasize, regardless of the option for treatment, the key is early detection. And early detection comes by frequency of visiting your physician. This is Urban Grace Church. It used to be First Baptist, built in 1925, upgraded. And we made a decision. We were down to 14 members. I was the president of the congregation. And we made the decision that we had to drop being a Baptist and open it up to make it a broad, open concept, non-denominational. And now I can say to you, we have about 130 persons in the congregation, and we have a great number under 40 years of age. And before COVID, every Sunday morning we had anywhere from 15 to 25 children under 5 years of age. And that's been great. It's a great future for the church. Now, this is all about our community breakfast, and this, we call her Queen Charlotte. That picture was taken by Tom Holt. He may not like it, but I'm going to tell him what he does. He did a phenomenal job. And along with that one is Belle. Now, Charlotte is just the house mother who raised 7 boys. She was from North Carolina. Belle is from Indonesia, who is now deceased. But those two along with about 5 other others, were the foundation for our community breakfast, which started in 1995. And we continue with it. And this is an example. And this is the fourth Sunday meal, which is always French toast, sausage, grits. And you see that super lady next to the queen. That's our own Jewel Hope. Now, Tom is a bad guy, so we left him out the picture. and then the person with the gray hair is George. And George is a former executive with the fact he was the executive director for the Warehouse Foundation at one time. And then to the left is Stephanie, who lives across near the Holtz, and her husband was a big wheel with the TV station, the radio station at PLU before it was sold. And since during the COVID, we stopped for about 6 or 7 months or more, and then we went back to taking it out. And then in August of this year, we went back to serving again. Not August, but it was April, I guess it was. So, I'm gonna go back. Okay. This is the way the arrangement is now. So this is a recent picture within the last 3 weeks. And you notice we only have 4 at a table. And we use, right now, like last Sunday, we served 155 meals. Now, I gave you the number of meals because we have the philosophy that as long as you're hungry, take what you want, but you can go back for seconds. We probably have about 20 or 25 who will do that. And we have enough food and everything for them. And
Is this an Urban Grace Church?
yeah, Urban Grace, 9th and Market, yeah. The interesting thing, I have to say that, Tom would be embarrassed, but we have persons who said, if you have to reduce the offerings in the meal, make sure you serve grits. Tom is our grit maker. He gets there anywhere between 6 and 6:15 each Sunday morning, and he has a special ceremony. He ended up getting sick this year, and then I had to follow, but he laid out the instructions. It was not good as good, but I did follow his instruction. And they were excited when he returned. This is very dear to me. This is our Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, which was founded in 1906 on December the 6th at Cornell University. It's amazing. It was this university that had the first African-American fraternity. Then out of that, it went to a variety of schools, mostly the HBCUs, historical black colleges and universities. But the uniqueness of this group was twofold. In 1969, I was the only African-American in Tacoma with being an Alpha. And in order to form a chapter, you have to have an existing Alpha person without any black males with much education to even qualify. There was a woman by the name of Claudia Thomas, who's now deceased, we call the mother of our fraternity, who told us we should challenge and go through McCord and go through Fort Lewis, because all those black officers out there had to go mostly through black schools, and if they did, they're Alphas, and she was right. So we ended up finding 6 more. I was the only civilian. And it's interesting, of this, 3 of the ones recruited were medical doctors, all in Madigan. One was a pharmacist at Madigan, and then one was in the civil office. He was an upscale financial person, and we formed the chapter. And after we formed the chapter, we had to have another chapter to make us official. And so that was a chapter in Seattle, headed by C.P. Johnson, who was a retired teacher in Bellevue, and we formed our chapter April 5th, 1969. We celebrated our 50th year a couple of years ago. And that whole thing is put on scholarship, community service, and our theme was always, first of all, servants of all. And on a national level, if you want to know who were some men who wore that, Martin Luther King, Jackie Robinson, the Thurgood Marshall. At one time, 95% of the presidents of universities in black schools were all alphas, even though there are 8 or 9 fraternal groups that are in chapters, but we took the lead first, and then the others followed. So, but now we don't try to boast who is better or best, because we all are committed to improving the quality. 3 minutes, I'll be through. But you went 16, I counted you. Okay. Lifetime Achievement, NAACP, I've been a lifetime member of that because that organization was very instrumental. In fact, that was the organization that changed Tacoma with the leadership of the late Jack Tanner, the late Angelo Giardroni, and the late Roy Wilkins, who was the national president of NAACP, who came and visited in the school district in 1965 when there was major activities all across the country. And he convinced Angelo Giardroni he should make some changes. So that's when the first black administrator appointed was Gene Breckenridge. And he was at town, and then I was the next person as the first African-American black principal, all because of that organization. This is probably the highlight of everything in 2019. Helen and the group performed out at PLU as they had the program for me to go to Oslo, Norway to participate in the Greater Tacoma Peace Prize. And the recipient of that was the ambassador of leadership from the person from Ethiopia. And what I want to close on about that is that I had never witnessed a place like Norway before. I didn't see a police officer until the day of the event, and they had it because that was a possible threat. I never saw any dirt on any street. I only saw one person that could possibly have been homeless the whole time I was there. And I went into the shopping areas. You never saw any shoplifting. Everybody was patient. The thing was an education to me, though. You couldn't spend your money. You had to have, everything was Visa. And that was no. So I brought a lot of money back. Okay, this is on the final day, they had the people there on the horses. They had about, well, it was 1,400 people into this auditorium. There was no usher. You had your invitation. Everybody all went to their seat. But these persons were on the outside there, and I'm entering there all decked out. You see that jacket, it's cold. That was in December. But I teased this lady because I was asking whether she had imported the horses from Texas. So we had quite a conversation. And I even took pictures with them. You know, they thought it was fun. I broke them down. And Tom has been into this place here. That's the auditorium where they hold the ceremony. This is the Willie Stewart Academy that was on 1717 Tacoma Avenue, or 1880, corner of 19th and Tacoma Avenue. But beginning in 23, it will be raised. In fact, it's up for sale right now, and we're moving into 9th and Market Street into a new building, updated technology, more adapted to being a school to excite. But people go there 17 years of age, 14 credits behind. And that's the apartment, that's a court that's named after me at the corner of Center Street just before you get to Henry Foss for my many years of service with the Tacoma Housing Authority. And currently I'm with the Pierce County Housing Authority. That's it. And yeah. In addition to being a Texan, I have a very unique birthday, so don't be careful on how you worship. I was born on 12/25, 1935. And Mario, if you're a good mathematician, how old am I?
19, you're about 39.
And I figured that because he can't figure the math, see? So he wants to make the humor. Okay, I'm open to any questions, and I'll step aside. And thank you, Lynn, for allowing me to present.
Where in Texas are you from?
I'm from South Central Texas, Columbus, Texas, which is the midpoint between, almost the midpoint between San Antonio and Houston on Highway 10. And if you go north 70 miles, you go to Austin. If you go south 80 miles, you go to Corpus Christi. And that's the place was where the last public lynching in Texas took place 1,000 yards from where I was born. In November 1935, and I was born in December, and they were concerned in terms of whether I would be a miscarriage with my mother because of all the excitement that took place when they hung two boys, 12 and 13, after they castrated them. And in fact, that resurfaced again this year because some kids from University of Houston coming through wrote that story, brought about some healing, so it opened up some wounds again. Yeah.
What brought you to Washington?
Hot ho, hot ho! United States Army. and that was the best thing happened to me because after 55 days in a pup tent up in Yakima in the firing center in 1960 in May, I received a letter from my mother knowing that I was approaching getting out of the service in August because you have 2 years. And she had taught for 1 year in Texas. She said, since you are near the president, so that was her level of geography, you can get a job. So I want you to stay there because they're not retaining any of the black men as teachers in the smaller communities of Texas. So therefore, it would be better for you. And that's how I ended up making an application here. And my interview was very interesting. My first sergeant was upset because he had said earlier that we had some college kids in the class, in his platoon and all, but they're not better than him, even though he has a 5th grade education. So it was a process of getting the support even to come down for my interview. And when I did, the person was Leslie Hoare was there. We talked for 40 minutes. But I said, Mr. Hoare, I came down to talk about a job. He said, oh, shucks, fellow Texan, you were hired before you got here. That was it. Yeah. Thank you. And then would you give a clap to my friend Tom because he needs it.
Thanks, Willie. Very, very good.
So the last presentation is a video that John Carlton made of a first night event we put on called Nose Ringers versus Old Farts.
The place, Tacoma, Washington. The time, 2013, New Year's Eve. The event, Nose Ringers versus Old Farts, a gravity-powered art car race. And it's part of the Tacoma First Night Celebration. The evening begins with an eye-opening parade of local starlets, stallions, and the high echelon of social strata, featuring phantasmagoric floats and horses of a different color. Or do you say coal ore? First night is the arts-based, family-friendly celebration that takes over downtown Tacoma on New Year's Eve every year. The theme of this year's First Night extravaganza is welcoming in the Asian New Year of the horse. The clip-clop of the coconut hooves were banging in the new year like African swallows on bongos. Then at 9 p.m. precisely, the big event, Nose Ringers versus Old Farts. The show begins with a big welcome to the thousands who have come from all over the world to see this heraldic event of Wagnerian proportions. As the races are set to begin, you can almost smell the tension as the gripping drive for victory pierces the fog. But this didn't all just appear here like a meteorite from space. No, plans started months ago by Lynn Di Nino and her arty-doing companions were followed through on the day of the race by early and hard-working preparation to make this historic soapbox racecourse frenetically alive in art energy, yet safe for drivers and audience alike. These magnificent sculptures await those contestants who can cut the mustard, cut to the chase, and most certainly, cut to the quick. And while there was plenty of work to do on the day of the big race, there had already been months of energized preparation, design, production, and testing. Artists, performers, volunteers, and community visionaries worked together with clear direction and a common plan to ensure that this first night event would be an event to remember. In basements, workshops, and studios throughout the City of Destiny, designers, artists, engineers, and nerds set about creating their entries for the all-American Nose Ringers versus Old Farts Art Car Race. Behind the scenes, the great American artist is hard at work, building, creating, and testing their chariots of glory. In the days leading up to the big race, designers and drivers tested their jaunty chariots of glory to ensure safety and, of course, to maximize speed and roadworthiness. Every one of these cars represents many long, hard hours of thought and building. While at this point, these mechanical thoroughbreds were yet to be finished as art, their drivability was the focus of these test runs. Style, form, and platonic ideals don't have to be sacrificed for comfort, speed, or the thrill of sporting competition. And while Carl Reyes and his Valkyries rehearsed with fervor, others like Steve LeBurge and his cohorts built and carefully tuned Nigel, their bottle-smashing gizmo that would be used on first night to herald the start of each race. At last, the night of the race arrives and the stage is set. The fully realized art cars are positioned in the pit area as the final countdown begins. Meet old fart driver Joe Stortini.
Brings back great memories.
The veteran soapbox derby champ who is chafing on the bit for another grand victory like he had 65 years ago. He won a soapbox derby race on this same Tacoma street in 1948 and went on to race in the World Championship in Ohio. Go get 'em, Joe! Last-minute meetings of the mind help fine-tune the imminent spectacle.
We have two. To what? These guys. They're here to do the tethering.
Are the builders getting announced here?
As soon as I get up there. Actually, as soon as, well, yeah.
Okay. And then go. And then we'll go up. Okay. So do you want just the two of us, or do you want to? All right.
So, but there's 8 of us.
Do you need us down here or not?
Anticipation swells the hearts of the discerning throngs who line the curb. Master of Ceremonies, the always eloquent Doug Mackey.
Good evening, race fans. You're looking live
at St. Helens Avenue in historic downtown Tacoma, Washington, the site of tonight's gravity-powered art car race, pitting the youth and unfettered aggression of the nose ringers versus the craftiness and cheating ways of the near-death old farts. This unprecedented spectacle also features Mr. Carl Marx Reyes and his golden-throated Valkyries. A mind-bending, bottle-breaking masterpiece starter bell we call Nigel, as well as a cast of many volunteers, including our 5 lovely pit girls. 4 prizes of intrinsic value will be awarded to 4 of the 8 car designers who are the Blindy Interiors crew, the Fab Lab crew, Randy Jones, Ann and Paul Mearsman, Indian Owen of Olympia, Carlos Taylor Swanson, Galen Turner, and Otto Youngers. We will introduce the drivers with each race as it unfolds. Thank you for attending. Happy New Year's Eve, and prepare to race!
Now the spotlight falls upon our masters of daring do. Finally, the climax of all the hopes and ambitions, and of weeks of preparation. And here they go! That's the way to gallop into the year of the horse. Seems there's no stopping Joe. Boom shakalaka! The hay bales prove their weight in gold. The beguiling car hop girls are on duty to pamper the lucky drivers.
go to our next cue. It's time to begin our award ceremony. The bench stock racer created by Carlos Taylor Swanson and driven by the lovely Tara Anderson, Madeira Fine Furniture's car number 4. Ladies and gentlemen, the lovely Tara Anderson receiving her award. Thank you so much. Of the female form in a design, it goes to Joyride number 3, Paul and Ann Mearsman. There's Ann Mearsman. What a beautiful. And finally, our biggest, best award goes to the fastest, the winner of our. Oh, what a lovely award. This is something to be cherished. Ladies and gentlemen, your winner of the. Thank you, everyone, for attending our cluster-friendly event. Nose ringers versus old farts. Happy New Year, everyone.
And so ends the jubilant Year of the Horse First Night Art event in Tacoma, Washington.
Questions?
What year was this?
2013, I'm pretty sure.
What, was it 2012 going to 13 or 2013 going to?
I have
So it
never,
would have been 2013, it would have been the end of 13.
I have never known how
I
they
had the same
figured
problem
that
on
out.
my birthday, so.
Any other questions I can't answer?
That's really pulling stuff out of the fire tonight for you.
I'll tell you one behind the scenes thing. First of all, you know, we're all volunteers and nobody really knows what they're doing. You know, we've never organized a race like that, so we didn't have any requirements for the cars. So one of the cars lost a wheel and went into the audience and ran into somebody. And luckily they weren't hurt badly. And then another thing that happened was, I don't know why, maybe we weren't using cell phones a lot, but there was really no communication between Doug Mackey, the MC, and the cars at the top of the hill. We thought that he would be able to read the hand signals of the people up at the top that were helping the drivers in the cars get organized. But it was crowded, people were walking around. Doug could not tell what was going on up there at all. So people like me were on the curb running up to the top of the street. Which cars are you putting on next? And then running back down to Doug. Doug, it's this car and that car. You know,
Nobody
so
had a cell phone.
he was just ad-libbing the whole time, like just making it up. And it didn't seem like the audience could tell what was going on.
No, didn't matter anyway.
Anyway, that's it, folks. Thanks.
Yeah.